I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents.
Is yoga for Christians? Well, these people think so. A special year for these fathers.
Let people know how happy we are serving God's people and to get some good news out for a change.
And a son keeps his promise for his mother.
And I look at Jesus and I say to him, if my mother doesn't die today, I will become a priest.
Good evening. Francesca Maxime is off tonight. Well, Christian yoga. It may sound like a contradiction in terms, kind of like hot ice or a beautiful nightmare, but plenty of Christians are practicing this Eastern meditation as a form of prayer. Now, the Vatican has warned that yoga can degenerate into a cult of the body, but our Natalia Ortiz visited a church in Midtown that says they have found a balance.
Hands, if it's off the chest, to the thigh. Just easy.
Are yoga and Christianity a match made in heaven? Amy Russell, who teaches a Christian yoga class at St. Paul the Apostles in Manhattan, thinks the two are meant for each other.
Well, Christianity is a faith grounded in the human body. We have the figure of Jesus Christ, who stands prominently in the center. Christian faith invites us as human beings to claim our relationship as an embodied one with our bodies into the body of Christ. And so it only makes sense that we would have practices of prayer that would be embodied.
According to Amy, this Christian version of yoga was created in the 1950s by René Deschenais, a Benedictine monk. He borrowed elements from this Eastern practice and incorporated them into a Christian prayer practice.
What we do in our class is move through a series of chants and that are Christian chants and Christian prayer, some reading from Scripture, and then we do some warm-ups and practice some postures. And the postures are traditional Hatha yoga postures. The reality of the human body has just not really been front and center of our prayer practice. That's not true, though, in other faith traditions. Buddhism and Hinduism both have integrated long histories of attention, great attention, to the discipline of body.
What does this class bring to the table for you that a traditional yoga class doesn't?
I had tried traditional yoga in the past and found that the Eastern philosophies didn't really gel with my Christian faith, and so I wanted the physical benefits of yoga with a different alternative.
Miles Lacey, who began practicing Christian yoga years ago at his parish in Brooklyn, believes it completes his prayer experience.
You know, we can think the prayer, we can say the prayer, but there's more to our being than just, thought and words.
But some people feel there's no room for yoga in Christianity. Though the Catholic Church doesn't outright forbid it, a Vatican report stated that Christian meditation with Eastern techniques can be dangerous, while stating they can also have positive uses. The Vatican cautions that yoga can be overly impersonal and self-centered.
I think you do have to be very careful to make sure that it's God-centered, and I think Amy does a very good job of keeping us focused on God throughout the class.
Yoga is not a religion, according to this Christian yogi, but an ancient Hindu practice meant to bring your body and mind into harmony using meditation, physical postures, and breathing. Amy preaches a brand of yoga she says puts God first and unites your body of prayer to the body of Christ.
But I think that once people really begin to open up to the reality of their own bodies, and they realize the power of embodied prayer, they begin to realize that what's happening is that we are taking more and more and more of ourselves to God. And that's really what it's all about.
Well, that is our Natalia Ortiz reporting. Now, we also talked to a priest who practices Christian yoga. He discussed that and other forms of Christian prayer, and we'll actually be bringing you that interview tomorrow night. Well, stay tuned. There's much more current straight ahead. A feast day for a priestly saint. That, and we'll have the day's headlines. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later on in the show, a local priest shares his inspiring vocation story. But first, let's turn to today's headlines. Rockville Center Bishop William Murphy supports the Lighthouse Project. The project would build a new arena and multi-purpose complex on Long Island where the Nassau Coliseum currently stands. The bishop says he believes the Lighthouse Project offers Nassau a new moment. From Vietnam, at least 500,000 people took to the streets to speak out following violence against Catholics there. It all started about 2 weeks ago when a group of people tried to build a makeshift worship area on the site of a bombed-out Catholic church. Vietnam's government has said it would prosecute 7 people arrested in that incident. Christians in Nigeria also facing violence. Military officials and the Red Cross say in one part of the country, more than 700 people were killed. The head of a diocese in Nigeria wants the government to pay for 11 churches burned by Islamic extremists. The priest says it's wrong to conclude that religion did not play a part in that violence because no mosques were damaged. When it comes to morality, even banks need to be wary. From Germany, this story of a Catholic bank apologizing after it purchased stocks in Wyeth, a company that makes birth control pills. A German newspaper says Pax Bank also bought shares of an arms maker and a tobacco company. A bank spokesman says critical investments in question were overlooked. Well, what's not being overlooked is the year for priests, and Rome Reports has a closer look at the patron saint for priests on this, his feast day.
Saint Jean-Marie Vianney's life stands out as most unique for a priest. For example, he barely finished his seminary studies because he had trouble learning Latin, and he even tried escaping from his parish duties on 3 occasions because he saw himself as an obstacle. However, he persevered, and today he's known as the patron saint of priests, an example for all ordained. He was born in 1786 in Dardilly, France. He grew up in a Catholic family of humble origins. He worked as a farmer until he was 19, when he was then able to join the seminary.
It wasn't easy for him to join the seminary because he had problems learning Latin, and back then you had to know Latin to become a priest.
But through his perseverance and with the help of a priest who never lost hope in him, he was able to finish his studies to later become the priest of the village of Ars in France, where he was greatly loved.
I would say that his main virtue was that he was a priest according to the heart of Jesus. This means that he devoted his life to priestly ministry, preaching, the celebration of the Eucharist, and confession, all in a heroic way because he spent a lot of time in the confessional.
Soon his fame spread. His distinct way of praying and celebrating Mass captivated people. His homilies were simple but profound. He also had a great capacity to listen to others. In his later years, he would spend 18 hours a day in the confessional. Wise and simple people alike sought his guidance on how to find God's forgiveness and counsel. In 1855, nearly 20,000 people visited him.
The secret of his success was that sinners found in him great peace. He impressed them because, through the grace of God, he was able to sense the secrets in the sinner's soul and to offer consolation.
That's why the Pope, on the occasion of the 150th anniversary of the death of Saint Jean-Marie Vianney, has dedicated a special year for priests. He hopes the faithful, and especially priests, learn more about the saint's virtues and put them into practice.
Well, stay tuned. We'll have much more on the year for priests just ahead.
Coming up, a year to honor fathers like them.
To give thanks to God for the priesthood and an opportunity, hopefully, to pray that more young people would consider the Lord's call to priesthood today.
Welcome back. As we just heard before the break, today is the feast day of St. John Vianney, the patron saint for priests. And on June 19th, the Year for Priests got underway. And just before that, I had the chance to speak with a couple of men from the diocese on the topic of vocations. We're talking today about the Year for Priests, and joining me to discuss that are Father Kevin Abels, who is the Associate Vocations Director for the Brooklyn Diocese, and also Alonzo Cox, who is a 4-year seminarian. Gentlemen, welcome.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate it. Now, Father, I just wanted to direct the first question for you very simply. What is the year for priests?
The year for the priest, given to us by our Holy Father, is an opportunity for the church all throughout the world, both ordained and lay, to celebrate the priest and the life and the ministry of the priest. And it comes from the 150th anniversary of St. John Vianney, the Curé of Ars, who is the patron saint of all parish priests. So it's an opportunity for the church to give thanks to God for the priesthood, and an opportunity, hopefully, to pray that more young people would consider the Lord's call to priesthood today.
And maybe even for folks to learn a little bit more about the priesthood as well.
Absolutely.
And that vocation. Now, do you think that maybe with some recent news like Father Coutier, the entire situation there, maybe the Irish abuse story that came out, do you think maybe vocations have been on the decline recently?
I don't think so. I just think that what we have to do a better job of doing as priests is to get the word out. And to let people know how happy we are serving God's people, and to get some good news out for a change, and not to only focus in on the negative publicity that unfortunately we are hearing these last few years. Gotcha. But hopefully this year will change the tone.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, do you think that maybe this will actually help in doing that?
We're praying that it will, and knowing the wonderful priests in the diocese, their enthusiasm, their love for God and their priesthood, I have no doubt that this will be a very wonderful and successful year for the priests.
Great. Now, Alonzo, what is your vocation story? Kind of, how did you come to sort of receive the call into the priesthood?
Well, I knew since I was a very young boy that I wanted to be a priest, and I can remember being mesmerized by priests. You know, my parents took us to church every week, every Sunday. And I can remember at my confirmation very vividly having the idea of God calling me to this vocation, calling me to priesthood. So I had the wonderful opportunity to be with so many wonderful priests in my home parish. And right after confirmation, I worked in the rectory, and I was an altar boy, and I was an altar server. And I was in high school. I said, sort of laying out what God wanted from me as a young man, and all of a sudden I got in contact with the vocation director and entered the seminary right after high school, and the rest is history.
Right. And here you are.
Here I am. Yeah.
Well, Father Kevin, what about you? What is your vocation story?
Becoming a priest was something I never thought about. I wanted to become a lawyer. I wanted to get married and have a family. But one day, one man asked me a very powerful question. And that man was the pastor of Lady of Hope, my home parish, Monsignor Civillo. And I remember one Sunday leaving the doors of the church, he stopped me and he said to me, "Kevin, you should think about becoming a priest." And I was so taken back by it. I said no, but he kept on asking me the question because I was so involved in the parish. And then one day I was just so distracted in my schoolwork, that question kept on haunting me. And so I went back to him and I said to him, why did you disrupt my life? And he said to me, I wasn't disrupting your life. It was God, in a very positive way, disrupting your life. And all he wants you to do, is to explore and to consider. And I'm so glad that I considered it, and I'm so glad I decided to explore it more, because I wouldn't be here today. Right. Very happy with what I'm doing.
Well, very good. Now, Alonzo, what do you think are maybe some of the impediments for others? I know that your story, you have known since a very young age that you were called into the priesthood. Maybe some others haven't heard the call, or they haven't heeded and answered that call. What do you think maybe are some of the obstacles?
There are a lot of things that guys are afraid of in answering the call. I know of many young men who may feel as if they are called to priesthood, but are fearful of whether or not they are inadequate. They're not able to fulfill the task. Maybe I know of certain guys who are really afraid of the whole school aspect, the education aspect of being in the seminary for 5 years or more. The whole idea of celibacy, you know, the whole idea of commitment to God as a celibate man. And whenever I talk about vocations in the parishes, I think of John Paul II, be not afraid. Be not afraid to allow the Lord to take over and to just lay all of that before him. And that really got me through all of my fears and all my anxieties of thinking of the words of John Paul II, be not afraid. So
and
important.
if I can just add to that,
Sure.
2 things for me. Number one, I think we have to get information about what we do as a priest out to our young people. I think many people, young people especially, they do not have information about the life and the ministry of the priest. And if we don't have information given to them, then they won't consider it. You know, you choose any profession that's out there. If I don't know certain information about the lifestyle of a doctor, a teacher, a lawyer, whatever, I'm not going to consider it. And I think that this year, hopefully, will be an opportunity for us as a church to really get the positive out and to really let the people, and young people especially, know what the life of a priest is about. And the second is family. You know, parents, don't be afraid. Encourage, you know, it's a wonderful way of life. There are happy priests out there. Look in your parishes, support it, and God will take over.
Right. And we've only got about probably 30 seconds left, but I just wanted to ask very quickly, any events going on to commemorate the Year for Priests in the Brooklyn Diocese?
In January, the diocese is leading a pilgrimage to Oz, run by Father Gerard Sauer and Father Joseph Fonte. And then 2 other events during the year will have the opportunity for the presbyterate of the diocese to come together and to pray and to talk about spirituality and what have you. So those are some events happening for the year.
Oh, very good. Father Kevin Alonso, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Great. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Well, Father Kevin Abels, the Associate Director of Vocations for the Brooklyn Diocese, and Alonzo Cox, a 4th-year seminarian. Well, we'll have much more throughout the year for priests as well. And stay tuned, there's much more currents straight ahead.
Coming up, the powerful impulse that led him to the priesthood.
I say, Father, it's not about me. It's about my mother.
Welcome back. As the church marks the Year for Priests, we want to actually meet some of the priests in our area. Father Jean-Miguel Auguste is pastor of St. Jerome's in East Flatbush. He shares his inspiring vocation story in today's Eyewitness.
Some people are baptized, confirmed, but they don't really know that God is real because they have no personal experience. I was in high school when my mother got sick. The day she was going to surgery, I went to church. And I looked at Jesus and I said to him, if you save her, if my mother doesn't die today, I will become a priest. She recovered from the surgery. And she was fine. And I forgot about the promise I made. I tried to play a game with him. I say, it's not fair, God. You know, it's her life, it's not my life. But my mother got sick again. The cancer was back. And then I remember 10 years ago that I made a promise to God. I say, God, I'm back to confirm my promise to you. I want to be a priest. God save my mother. I don't want her to die now. Without my mother receiving any treatment, any medication, the cancer began to shrink. And I went to the priest of my town and I said, I want to be a priest. He said to me, you? You want to be a priest? Not you. I say, Father, it's not about me. It's about my mother. My mother is 87. She just turned 87 last Monday, and she's still alive. So since then, she has never been sick. Never been sick. I've surrendered everything. Ask me if it was easy? No. If anyone said to you, it is easy to give up things to follow Jesus, it's not true. But I'm happy. Because I've come to believe that everything is about love. I love my mother, and I was willing to give my life for her. And to some extent, I gave my life for her.
A very powerful story there. Father Jean-Miguel Auguste, pastor of St. Jerome's in East Flatbush. He is today's eyewitness. Well, that is it for this edition of Currents. Coming up tomorrow, he risked his life to bring attention to Nazi atrocities. That and more right here tomorrow on Currents. Remember, you can always watch us online. The address there, netny.net/currents. On our site, you can see clips of the show and meet all the people who make it happen. You can also check out our blog. It's called Riding the Wave. Just click on it there on the right-hand side of the page. Now, you can also follow us on Twitter. The address there is twitter.com/currentsny. Well, thank you so much for watching. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Have a great night.